Hello and welcome to CMMI Tech Talk. In this Tech Talk, we will describe an important appraisal role, the appraisal participant, and try to shed some light on what an appraisal participant can expect before and during a CMMI appraisal. The CMMI Appraisal Method Definition Document, otherwise known as MDD, defines an appraisal participant as members of the organizational unit who must perform a process role and are identified in the appraisal plan as someone who will provide information used by an appraisal team. Appraisal participants provide information to appraisal team members, or ATMs, in various ways such as interviews, presentations, or demonstrations, providing additional evidence and other techniques to support the processes they perform. It is the responsibility of the appraisal team to collect as much information as possible from the appraisal participants to fully understand how the processes are being used and managed, and if they are being performed in the way they are presented. The role of the appraisal participant starts even before the on-site or phase 2 of the appraisal begins. Organizations that have chosen to conduct an appraisal have the task of deciding which portion of their organization they would like the appraisal to focus on. This is referred to as the organizational unit, or OU. An organizational unit is defined as that part of an organization that is the subject of an appraisal and to which the appraisal results are generalized. An organizational unit deploys one or more processes that have a coherent process context and defined set of process roles, and that operate within a coherent set of business objectives. The OU can consist of one project or multiple projects, and could also consist of several organizational support functions, or OSFs. An organizational support function is defined as a team or entity that provides products and/or services for a bounded set of activities needed by other portions of the organization. Some examples could include quality assurance, configuration management, training, or finance. Appraisal participants must be in a process role within the projects or organizational support function, meaning they are the individual that is doing the work. A process role is a description of the roles of people who develop, use, or follow a process as an organization. This role is typically recorded in a process description or related artifact, such as a roles and responsibility table or matrix. People in these roles provide objective evidence, OE, showing and explaining their roles and responsibilities and how they participate in the processes. That means that appraisal participants might be asked to help on more than one topic during the appraisal. The appraisal team leader, or ATL, is the member of the appraisal team responsible for leading the appraisal activities and informing appraisal participants of their role and scheduling their interactions with the appraisal team. The ATL may be assisted by an organizational unit coordinator, or OUC, which helps with participant communication as well as many of the logistic planning for the appraisal, such as participant notifications, scheduling, documentation requests, location and travel, and any other resources needed. Once appraisal participants have been selected and their availability for all appraisal activities is confirmed, they will be notified of their role and their scheduled interview or other sessions, such as a demonstration with the appraisal team. Now let's look at the role of the appraisal participant during the conduct phase of the appraisal. This is where the appraisal participant will play an active role in enabling the appraisal team to collect objective evidence. During the conduct phase, one of the first activities that the appraisal participants will be a part of is the opening brief. The ATL will review the appraisal process, purpose, and objectives. During the briefing, appraisal participants are given a high-level description of the types of activities that go on during the appraisal and what their role is. The briefing might be in person or conducted virtually. During the briefing, the ATL starts by describing the scope of the appraisal. What is the organizational unit, OU, the target level of the appraisal, and which projects and organizational support functions are being focused on? If activities are going to be conducted virtually during the appraisal, the ATL will describe their code of conduct, such as cameras must be on during the interview. The ATL will also review the objectives for the appraisal and introduce the appraisal team. All appraisal team members and appraisal participants need to be present during the briefing. The appraisal scheduled events and event locations are reviewed. If there are any changes to the schedule after the opening brief or specific information that needs to be delivered, the ATL or Organizational Unit Coordinator, OUC if applicable, will communicate it to the appraisal participants. All appraisal team members and the appraisal participants follow the confidentiality and non-attribution agreement through the entirety of the appraisal and with submission of the appraisal results package. This agreement not only protects the objectivity of the appraisal process, but allows for appraisal participants to speak openly and honestly during interviews. All information that participants give during the appraisal is not attributed to a single team member or group and remains anonymous. All discussions are structured, private to the team and appraisal members, meaning no observers or anyone else is allowed in an interview. If at any point the confidentiality is broken, for example, an appraisal participant does not maintain confidentiality, the ATL may stop the appraisal. Appraisal participants should not be in any interview sessions that would make them uncomfortable or be a conflict of interest, or COI, meaning that appraisal participants should not be in an interview session with any direct reporting relationships. The appraisal participant's main role during the appraisal is to provide objective evidence, OE, in the form of an affirmation or interview. OE is defined in the MDD as artifacts or affirmations used as indicators of the implementation or habit and persistence of processes to meet the intent and value of one or more model practices. Affirmations, typically in the form of an interview, are essentially responses from an appraisal participant to confirm that a process is or is not being performed. In some cases, affirmations might come in the form of written responses like surveys and email questions or messaging. Participants might be asked for visual evidence like demonstrations or presentations of a process to provide more insight into the process they perform. Interviews can be done individually or as part of a small group. Interviews are used to support the artifacts collected, which are outputs of the process performed. Appraisal participants should not feel as though they have anything to prepare for an interview session. Appraisal participants will be asked questions about the work that they do, how it is done, how they know what to do, and any work aids, assets, or tools that they use to complete their work. Appraisal participants are not allowed to take notes or record sessions to maintain confidentiality. The appraisal team uses the information the appraisal participants provide to gain information about how work is being performed. There are some overall guidelines appraisal participants can expect when being interviewed. Group interviews are used to collect affirmations from appraisal participants in common areas, processes, or by the CMMI model practice areas being used. Interview groups are typically participants who perform the same or similar processes. For example, project managers may be interviewed together, and the work that they do may cover multiple of the CMMI practice areas like estimating, or EST, planning, plan, monitor control, MC, and risk and opportunity management, RSK. Appraisal participants can primarily expect to be a part of standard interviews, but may also be involved in on-call or follow-up interviews. Standard interviews are structured, planned, and scheduled, while follow-up interviews are more flexible and used only as needed to get additional information. For follow-up interviews, appraisal participants are asked to keep a block of schedule open just in case additional interviews are needed. Appraisal participants might be interviewed by the entire appraisal team or a mini-team, which is a smaller group of at least 2 appraisal team members. One team member or multiple may ask the questions. The appraisal team members in the room will be taking notes. However, appraisal participants are not allowed to take notes during the interviews. Appraisal participants will be able to ask clarifying questions if needed. Appraisal participants can answer questions as they see fit. There is no one or right answer, rather just the answer, and if an appraisal participant is unsure, "I do not know" is also an acceptable answer. Other techniques that may be used alongside interviews: appraisal participants may be asked to submit a written response to questions in the form of an email or messaging, or to do a walkthrough or demonstration. It is rather common that the appraisal team may send a follow-up question or email to an appraisal participant. Towards the end of the appraisal participants may attend 2 finding sessions: the preliminary findings and final findings. Once all the objective evidence has been collected, reviewed, and evaluated, the appraisal team will present preliminary findings. In this session, appraisal participants are invited to review the preliminary results and ask any questions they have about the preliminary results. The appraisal team will walk through their observations for each practice area. Appraisal participants can add any additional information they think is needed to clarify the answers provided during interviews. Once the appraisal team is finished, they will present the results to the organizational unit. Once the final findings are presented, this is where the formal role of the appraisal participant will end. There are no formal activities for the appraisal participants after the appraisal has been concluded. Depending on an appraisal participant's role in the organization, there may be some informal appraisal-related activities that they participate in. For example, if an appraisal participant is involved in process or performance improvement initiatives, they may have some follow-up activities they may participate in. These are optional activities and do not impact any appraisal results or ratings. The time commitment for an appraisal participant may vary depending on their process role and the amount of objective evidence they will need to provide for the appraisal team. It is safe to say that the appraisal participant will need to be available for a few hours during the conduct appraisal phase, which is usually 5 to 8 days depending on the appraisal scope. Time varies depending on how many interview sessions that appraisal participant will attend, how many projects or organizational support functions they are providing evidence from. To recap, appraisal participants, determined prior to the appraisal conduct phase or on-site period, participate in the following activities: opening brief, interview session, preliminary findings, final findings, provide objective evidence on their process role to the appraisal team, and their time commitment varies but is limited to the conduct phase. Thank you for joining us for this CMMI Tech Talk. You can also check out our other CMMI Tech Talks that review additional appraisal roles. You can find the links below. And if you have any additional questions, please contact us at support.isaca.org.